Buenos dias, mi amigas. ¿Cómo estás? Don't worry, I'm not going to preach the whole sermon in Spanish. Siéntese, por favor. Sandra and I just got back from the most wonderful trip to the Dominican Republic, and Father Mark has asked me to share a little bit about it with you today. So I began by telling you the gospel in Spanish, because this is all that we heard down there. Hardly anybody spoke English. It was a challenge for us just to communicate. But it was so exciting when you finally got to talk to somebody, as you do. But the master, the king, invited people to sit down at his table. His table. And he was preparing the banquet for them. And this is what God does for us all of the time. He invites us to come and sit at his table, to let go of the things of the world and to sit with him and to feast on the things that he gives us. And this is what we need to listen for, because we don't want to be like those people in the story who said, "No, Lord, I can't come to your table. I'm too busy with my own work," or "I'm too busy with my job," or "I'm too busy making money," or whatever the excuse that we have to not come and sit at the Lord's table and receive the wonderful gifts that he has for us. And this trip was a perfect example of that for me, and I think for Sandra as well, because we answered that call and we went to the Dominican Republic. I was so blessed, I just can't count the ways that I was blessed by that trip. Those people were absolutely wonderful. They were receptive to everything that we said. They were very glad we were there. And they are the most affectionate people I have ever met in my life. If I thought people here hugged and were affectionate, there's nothing like those people down there. I mean, everybody hugged us. They were so glad to see us, and they were just joyful, wonderful people. The experience was quite different, of course, being immersed in Spanish for 10 days. Seeing different patterns of life than what we're used to. The food was good, but I'll tell you, I've never taken so many cold showers in my life. we had cold showers, no water pressure, except for 2 days on the whole trip. We had a little bit of warm water. Still no water pressure, though. But the trip was good. We started out in Santo Domingo with Bob and Ellen Snow. Those are our missionaries, in case you're not familiar with them. They've come from the Diocese of Nebraska. They've been down there at least 13 years now, and they love it. They're having a hard time dealing with the idea of retiring because they're just so immersed in the people, and I can see why. I never thought about going on a mission trip anywhere. It just never appealed to me, never occurred to me. Till all of a sudden, this came along, and I knew it was the right thing to do and the right time to do it. And that's when God just touches your heart with something that's so foreign to whatever you might be thinking of doing. And he's saying, go for it. Go do it. I know you don't speak the language. I had 3 years of high school Spanish, so I've got a little bit of inkling of it. But it was nothing like being immersed in it. We traveled to 4 different places over the 8 days we were actually busy in the country. We talked to 18 different churches involved in those 4 different places. We ministered to over 100 women and 1 young man who came to listen to us talk about altar care. I was amazed at the number of people, and so were they, who actually came to hear that. They were hungry for it. And I know we take some of these things for granted here in the States. Oh yeah, this is here, and everybody can do it if they want to, and whatever. But for them, this was very special. As we talked to them, and afterwards Sandra would ask them in a group, what did you get out of this? And a lot of them would say they got out of it the names of the things at the altar, the linens and all that, and how to care for them and some. But several of them we had all just been through the experience of setting up the chalice. And several of them looked at it and said, just to touch the chalice, just to touch it was a big thing for them. And some of them had tears in their eyes when they said it. It was amazing time for them. And for us to be able to share that with them. We have so much we take for granted. But for them who receive communion, they have the wafer and the priest takes it, puts it in the wine, and then gives it to them. That's the way they receive communion. They don't touch the chalice. And for them to get to do that, that was special. And we talked about the holiness of it. And sometimes we forget about the holiness of the things of God. But all of these things are holy. When Father Mark consecrates the bread and wine, it becomes the body and blood of Christ. And this is holy. And we are blessed people. And we should thank God every day for all of the blessings that we have. But you know what? Those people are blessed people too. And they are joyful people. And they are wonders in the Lord. And so we traveled through their countryside. We went to the cathedral in one place, and to the biggest church in another town, and then to one who only met in like a storefront building. They had no altar to speak of. They just had a table. They had some benches that they used. They had practically nothing. But they were as joyful in the Lord as any people I've ever seen, because they know that what's important is what comes from Him. And that was a joy to me, and to see their faces and to worship with them. Sandra led them in worship with the music, and that was an exciting thing for her too, because her Spanish is probably a little bit less than my Spanish, and we were singing in Spanish. And so we were just praising the Lord, and sometimes that's all we could do is praise the Lord because we couldn't keep up with the words. You know how we go when we get singing really fast? And you try to do that when it's another language. It's more interesting. But they were so glad, and we were so glad. There were some special times for me while I was there. One of them was the opportunity we had to go to the Daughters of the King annual convention down there. There were, I think there were 70 to 80 women that were there. Something like 72% of all the daughters in the country came to that. I mean, that's fantastic. Just fantastic. And they were so happy to be there. And so they liked each other. They were just bubbling over. And it was a business meeting. Can you imagine over half of our people going to a business meeting? But no, this was important to them. And they loved it. And we loved it because they loved it. And Sandra's got the scarf on that we were given, and there's also a t-shirt that they gave us in remembrance of the Daughters of the King thing. And today we're going to install Rebecca Smith as our newest member of the Daughters of the King here, so you'll get to see the installation process. And this is a group of prayer and service and evangelism. And as you know, most of our prayer chain is formed from the Daughters of the King. So we do a service here in this church too, just as they do in their country. We actually got to talk to the deacons too, because the priest that was supposed to talk to them at their retreat canceled out on them. So we got to talk to them. So we didn't do that the same way because we figured they knew all the names of everything and how to set it up. So what I got to share with them was the joy I have as a deacon having an altar guild to help. And how wonderful it is to be able to teach people to do these things and to have them go set them up, and that they can share in that joy and they can live out their Christian ministry in that way. Because a lot of these churches didn't have altar guilds yet. So these were brand new people we were talking to who'd never done it. And the deacons were not all that ready, I think, some of them, to give over their job. So I had to impress on them how important this is as a training thing, and that it frees them up for their real service, helping people. And so that, I'm not sure how that was received. We'll probably find out in future years how that one went over. But it was interesting, and we opened their eyes to some things, and the whole thing was a blessing. And I would encourage any one of you who ever has an opportunity to do that, to listen to God's call and to do it. I could spend hours telling you about that trip. And God's provision for us was overwhelming. And you knew His protection was upon us because we were getting ready to leave Miami to start with on the way down there. And too many people had taken their suitcases on the plane. There was no place to put them. So they had to wait while those were taken down and put in the hole. Well, while they were in the hole, they discovered a hole in the bottom of the layer right before the skin of the plane. I forget what it's called. So we spent another hour while they put that back together. But I'm kind of thanking God that we didn't go up with a hole down there, because I don't know what would have happened up there. And then coming back, my own personal miracle occurred, because I got on the plane to come home, and they were doing that routine, was turn off your cell phone. So I went to turn off my cell phone. I couldn't find my cell phone. It was gone. And it was not on the plane, and the door was shut, and there was nothing I could do about going and looking for my cell phone. And the one thing that they had warned us about the whole time down there was keep your things safe, because they won't be there if you don't. Well, I spent the whole way home worrying about my cell phone, and I called the people, I sent emails to the people, you don't call, to find out if anybody knew where there was. Nobody knew where my cell phone was. The hotel didn't know it, the people we stayed with didn't know where it was. Nothing. I figured my cell phone is gone. So the next day I get an email message in Spanish from the lost and found at the airport. They had my cell phone. Can you believe it? Oh, you know how dependent we get on cell phones, but the fact that somebody turned it in to the lost and found, I thought was a miracle. And I couldn't understand all the Spanish I was quite sure about, but my daughter, my oldest daughter, is fluent in Spanish. So I sent the message to her, and she corresponded back and forth with this gentleman down there at the airport. And I sent her the information about Ellen and Bob Snow, and they picked up my cell phone on their way here, and I got it back yesterday. Now that's a miracle. God be praised. That whole trip was God's blessings and His presence and His joy and His love. So when you're next called to come and sit at that table with God, with Jesus, and He says, feast on the things that I have to give you, please go. He may not send you to some place like the Dominican Republic. It may just be to your neighbor's house. But whatever it is, it will be a blessing for the people that you go to and a blessing for yourself. Amen.